Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at onpurposely.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Gospel Tech Podcast. My name is Nathan Sutherland, and this podcast is dedicated to helping families love God and use tech. Today, we are beginning a conversation on how we can help our children fix an unhealthy reset. What do we do about it? I have been pondering this for years, really. I have had some good answers and often have gotten a lot of questions about really the nuance of what does it look like for our family. Every family would come up and say, yeah, but we have older kids, we have younger kids, we have these kinds of ground rules already, we have this kind of disagreement within our family. How do we help take an unhealthy reset and move it to a healthy reset? And often the answers can feel really untenable for our daily lives. And today I'm excited to introduce the 5 fixes that I believe are possible for every family. You don't have to do all 5, but one of these 5 will work. Every one of them is scripturally sound, so it's not you just leveraging your effort to try to fix your kid, because as I love to say, your child is not a problem to fix. Your child is a person to love, and these are things we can do for very little money. I'm not asking you to get a degree in technology or to change your entire life on its head or to move either into a city or out into the countryside, into the cities, because people are like, we need to be around more people and have more opportunities. And people are like, we need to get out to the country so we have less distractions and more space. But really, at the end of the day, you can do these in either spot. You can be in downtown Seattle or downtown LA or downtown New York, or you could be right out here in Buckleytown in Western Washington, or somewhere beautiful like the fringes of Boise, Idaho. Come on. And you can still do these things. We can help to fix the unhealthy tech, not our children, but these are 5 fixes for unhealthy resets. So let's take a half step back and look at what we're talking about here. We are talking about tech that produces bad fruit. This means you have addressed the 2 kinds of tech, the tool and the drool tech, that some helps you create and some helps you consume. You've looked at a reset and you said, you know what, son or daughter of mine, your relationships and responsibilities, your emotions, sleep, enjoyment, and time, this acronym of reset, this area is impeded by your technology use. Maybe we don't know why yet. That's the conversation. But when you use that social media platform, when you use that news app, when you play that video game, when you use that streaming service, I see the relationships dip, or your emotional well-being dip, or your sleep goes away, or your enjoyment wilts and you get focused in this one area, or you cannot manage and be content with your time, whatever it is. And it might be all 5. Okay, so we have that, and we've talked about it, and we figured out where's the pebble, what's causing it, and what's the blister, what's symptomatic of something else in life. And the reason I bring that up is sometimes like a kid with technology who's 15 or 16 might just be going through a lot in life, and the tech might be the outworking, like my chocolate chip cookies. If I'm eating a lot of chocolate chip cookies, you probably don't need to just address my cookies. You probably need to address, hey, Nathan, I've noticed you're powering through some cookies. What's going on? And I might be anxious. I might be worried. I might be fearful. I might be depressed. I might be heartbroken about something in life, or I might just be living in a dark spot where I'm not following what God has called me to do. And I need that kind of accountability. You're providing that. And then once you know what's happening, you want some action points. And this is where the 5 fixes come in. So we'll get to those 5. Actually, here, I'll read what the 5 are, and then we'll do the verses. So the 5 fixes are analog adventures, beneficial stress, loving boundaries, real world friends, and hope. Reason for today, purpose tomorrow, pointing them to hope is kind of the bigger idea. With those 5, we are incorporating the best of the research, the best of the applicable information we have about our child, and engaging them in real world opportunities, which will draw them into more of who God is calling them to be, because they're not going to be in places of constant distraction or places that are directly negative to their improvement. The reset telling you that. That's why we're just talking about the negative ones, not kids who are doing fine. And we will be able to do what Galatians 5:19 through 22 says. So that's going to be our focus first. And the reason I focused on this, I wanted to get, I don't know if you ever have this when you're like teaching or you're trying to find a verse for somebody. You want to like get fancy and cute about it. And by that, I mean, you want to pull a verse that like doesn't get used very often and find that really niche, piece of encouragement, like, oh, this person must love Jesus a lot because it's so unique. But I didn't want to do that today. I mean, I did, but I chose not to, because Galatians 5:19 through 22 is a foundational verse for how we talk about loving God and using tech. And sometimes it feels impractical. You're like, all right, I don't disagree, but I also can't do anything about it. And I believe these 5 fixes give us a beautiful way to apply this. So here's what Galatians 5:19 through 22 says. It says, now the works of the flesh are evident: sexual immorality, impurity, sensuality, idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, rivalries, dissension, division, envy, drunkenness, wild parties, and things like these. I warn you, as I warned you before, that those who do such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. Don't worry. It doesn't mean if you ever have, you're not inheriting. It means all of us once walked in these ways, but we've been saved from it. Which brings us to, what were you saved to? But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. And it says, against such things there is no law. The reason we have that as our standard for the fruit that is produced in us when we do something, when we engage in technology, when we play sports, when we work our job, whatever we're doing, look at the fruit that's coming out of it. Because we are told in Proverbs 22:6 to train up our children in the way they should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. That is beautiful. If you, by the way, read 1 through 5 on that, it's all about making wise choices in the ways of the fool. I actually jotted a couple down. It's the prudent sees danger and hides himself, but the simple goes on and suffers for it. The reward of the humble, the reward for humility and fear of the Lord is riches and honor and life. Thorns and snares are in the way of the crooked. Whoever guards his soul will keep them. And then it says, raise up your children. So how do you stop your child from becoming a fool, becoming someone who is wicked and celebrates bad things happening to themselves or to others? We know of times in our lives, or of ones we love, people who've told war stories, and they're celebrating these times where they made horrific decisions that hurt themselves or others, but they're kind of proud of it. That's not good. It's not good for recovery, by the way. AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, has a rule. It's forbidden to tell war stories, to go on and celebrate these times when you lived through something that was questionable, and now you're kind of bragging about it. Instead, we're to say, that was dumb. It's okay to have made mistakes. It's not okay to celebrate them. We go, that was bad. I was in a bad spot. I'm in a better spot now. Here's what I will celebrate: God's goodness, my freedom, the life that I now get to lead when I'm away from those things. I'm not proud of that. It happened. It's true. And I will speak of it, but I'm not going to celebrate it. How do we stop a child from walking the path of foolishness and wickedness? We help them produce good fruit, and we call them out when they're not. So if you've done a reset and you've said, you know what, my child's relationships suffer when he or she uses, let's just say, this social media platform. They are more anxious. They have fewer quality friends. By quality friends, I mean people who are willing to spend life with them, not just use them as a convenience or to fill a squad if it was video games. But if we have that situation, then I've recognized one problem, one impeding area in a reset. And I go in and I go, all right, instead of anxiety being produced by this, I want to see joy. I want to see peace. I want to see self-control. How do we help our children produce these? Well, yes, we point them to Jesus, absolutely. But there are practical ways to do that. This is not behavior modification, because the goal isn't fix my child. I see a problem and I say, that is not in line with who God's called you to be. This is a foolish thing. And if I allow this to continue, it's only going to breed wickedness, sin, and death. That's going to happen. You're going to keep growing in the thing that's getting fed. And I want to stop that because I'm loving you. I don't want to be negligent as a parent. I don't want to be indifferent. In the same way, okay, this might be a little aside, but hear me. When we hear about God being angry, like that God is constantly angry at sin, it's that feeling we should have towards the things that hurt our children. We should be angry about the wrongs against our kids. That's okay. We don't sin in our anger, though. We give it to the Lord and say, Lord, I'm angry about this, which means you must hate it. Either that or I'm wrong, right? So either correct my heart, or would you use this anger to motivate me to love my child and to press in, right? It was the anger of God that sent his son to die in our place, not because of individual people that he liked more than others, but because he hates sin and he wanted to kill it forever. And there was only one way to do that. He couldn't just ignore it. He's not indifferent to sin. He's not like, well, I could pay for it, but I could also just go without it. I'm a pretty good God anyway, so I can do this. Instead, he hates it. He acts from that anger in love to even bring judgment onto his own son in our place. And that is what we get to do for our children. We get to experience part of that pain. It's not fun, but we don't blame our children. We don't ask them, why couldn't you be more like me? And we don't shame them for having made a mistake. We instead point out the shame, be like, that is detrimental. That is wicked. That is wrong. This is bringing death. Repent, come back, bear good fruit. And here's how we can do it. 5 ways. I mentioned them already, but I want to walk through them here. The 5 fixes. The first is analog adventures. I've talked about these. I've done whole podcast episodes on them. But the basic premise here is giving your child a way to be in a real world experience. A lot of the negativity that comes out of digital spaces is, as Jonathan Haidt says in The Anxious Generation, they're not real world experiences. They're not embodied. They're not synchronous. They're not one-to-one or one-to-several. They're usually one to innumerable multitudes, And then there's not a high bar for entry and a high cost to belong. The problem is if it's not real world by that definition, it becomes disposable because it becomes overly accessible. And if people don't like us, we don't do what they want, they just move us along. Or if the group doesn't do what I like, I just open a new tab and now I'm in a different group. This is important. Analog adventures demand that people be together. They demand that the adventures happen in a synchronous manner. We're on a walk together. We're doing that walk together. If you suddenly start doing a different activity, like talking to someone on your phone, that is noted as rude. You will have to at least apologize and go, oh, I'm sorry, it's my mom, right? Somebody's sick. Or, oh man, this is that one call I've been waiting for. Just give me one moment. You have to explain because there's a high barrier to entry. You and I are friends. We are in synchronous personal relationship, and you are exiting that relationship for this digital space. There better be an explanation. That is going to be expected as 2 friends who are in this commitment together. That's what's so cool about analog adventures. These can be anything great or small. The example that I'll just use in a quick conversation like this is Battle Club. Battle Club is basically tag with swords. Foam, little silly weapons. You can use pool noodles. You can use anything you want. You can use sticks. Go to the woods. Go nuts. But we chose foam swords. We used this as a Young Life thing back in the day, and my kids loved it. And we've done it for birthdays each year. For Owen in October, we run out to a local park. And yes, if you're wondering, tag with swords is what people would call LARPing. If you're not familiar with that term, good on you. But the basic premise is like we have some now, and we literally open up the garage door and have like foam arrows they shoot out of real bows, not compound bows, like 10-pound long or recurve bows. But like, that's it. And there's shields and there's spears and there's swords, and they run around and play tag with them. And it's like laser tag, but not as much hiding, a lot more running away or just fighting. But it's impossible to participate that and not laugh at some point because it's just so silly. Like, it's similar enough to tag, but you don't have to be the fastest one. You just have to win at hitting them, which is great. So, and this foam is a very like durable, they can swing it. It's still foam, but it's not going to break, which is lovely. So we enjoy that as just an example. A trampoline would be another great example. They get to go free play. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but it is this analog adventure, that is something they can do together at the same time. There's a high barrier to entry. If you just don't follow any rules, they're gonna be like, great, we're just gonna ignore you, right? Like, you don't get to play this game anymore because you're not participating with the whole. And that's actually a very important experience, understanding social boundaries and understanding social norms. Sure, they can go sideways, but that is the concept of a society. That is why we are trying to raise up children in the way they should go. So our society doesn't just pursue whatever feels right or whatever makes me safe and happy. Those are not our highest goods. We're instead called to be like Christ, and we want analog adventures that allow our children to do that. Hike, run, sports, board games, and certainly Battle Club. All right. The second one is beneficial stress. Beneficial stress, I'm going to break into 3 categories. It involves responsibilities, risk, and free play. So responsibilities. When we talk about responsibilities, your children as young as 5 and 6 can help clear a table, can help pick out their clothes for the next day, can brush their own teeth. Like, these are the responsibilities they can begin to grow. Anna was just mentioning the other day, like the opportunity for a child, even as young as 8, to begin ordering for themselves. If you go to fast food or to a restaurant, like to look at an adult and to say the words is an important just social skill. That's a responsibility you can give a child. It doesn't all have to be death-defying responsibility, but right after reading the book, The Anxious Generation, and being very convicted about this, we decided the responsibility we were going to extend our kids was the chance to ride bikes to their, piano lessons. And it's one major road to cross. It's well out of sight of where we live. It's multiple blocks away. But our children have walked there. They understand the roads. They've proven responsible. Like, we did our due diligence as loving parents. And then we gave them responsibility. And I just love the idea of what Haidt goes into in The Anxious Generation. He says the importance for responsibility is that your child will realize what he or she is capable of, and you will realize it too. And you begin to then trust that child with more responsibility. So please give responsibilities. House chores are not misusing your child. They're training them in the way they should go. Is there an upper limit that it would be unreasonable? Yes, we have child welfare laws for not allowing them to work in factories for a reason. They were given equipment that wasn't reasonable for them. They were used because they were small and disposable. You can grow a 7-year-old faster than you can grow a 20-year-old. But that isn't what we're talking about. We are talking about healthful opportunities that are given in love and might cause some real world stress. That is real. And we are there to support them through that and to push them on into even greater responsibilities as they grow. And then third is free play. Free play means they set their own rules and they solve their own problems. Setting their own rules doesn't mean Lord of the Flies, by the way. I'm not saying just send your children out to, the Thunderdome and let them go nuts. I mean, give them basic rules like don't hurt people on purpose, treat others like you want to be treated, recognize that they're made in the image of God. Okay, now, if you're going to go play tag, maybe you can only tag with your left hand. Maybe it needs to be 3 fingers or more. Whatever your rules are, okay, work them out amongst yourself. And I'm not going to intervene unless someone's actually hurt or there's such an impasse that people are breaking down and you need an adult referee. I get it. Seeking adult support in that is a sign of maturity. Come get me if it gets to that point, but don't tattle, right? We say that a lot, but we often leave it there. We're actually modeling beyond that. Free play allows that to happen. Free play also allows them to solve their own problems. Those are social skills. They need them. Please look at the internet and see how we are breaking down in our ability to handle confrontation, handle differing ideas, handle people breaking rules. It goes from you broke a rule to you must be a terrible person and not worth participating in our society. There has to be a middle ground. There has to be an opportunity for restoration in a high barrier of entry. Yeah, you're outside for now. And if you fix your ways, you can come join us again. That is a crucial biblical concept and concept for our children. So yes, first one that we need is analog adventure. Second is we need beneficial stress. Our children need to experience the ability to grow through, beneficial stress. Third is loving boundaries. Again, I've talked about giving your children these responsibilities and freedoms and risks. I want to say under that, risks, outside plays, top marks. Being able to be in nature exposes you to awe and wonder and curiosity and just the right amount of boredom, so you have to get creative to make your own fun, and risks that you have to get yourself into, which means you can generally get yourself out of them. They're not artificial. You're not being dropped on the top of some giant object and then told to get down, although that can be amusing. You are instead being given the opportunity to climb as high as you feel comfortable and then to fall or to climb out from that. And while injuries do occur, we are attempting to take an adequate amount of risk. Don't just assume that taking your 6-year-old base jumping is the way to make a healthy adult out of him or her. We are saying that these are natural opportunities provided in a natural play space without imminent adult supervision. No one's holding a hand, no one's actively shouting out rules. Organized sports are great. That's not what we're talking about here. All right. Moving on to loving boundaries. These are hedges. In the educational world, we call this scaffolding. It's where you meet a kid where he or she is at, and then you give him or her the next greatest challenge towards a greater goal. So if I want my son to be able to bike to piano, but he doesn't know how to ride a bike yet, it would be irresponsible for me to send him out, right? So I'm going to scaffold. Starting with the training wheels. Here we go. Learn how to ride a bike. Now, learn to ride it without. Now, let's walk this route. Let's learn how to take our lefts and rights. Let's learn how to find our way home. These are ways to scaffold, to give our children loving hedges. And then hedges directly ties to the digital buffers we put around our devices, around our network, and around our family. Our devices need accountability. Our network needs safety and boundaries for what's appropriate and not, that limits time of day and amount of time and specific sites you can go to. And then third, we need to make sure we've said the words to our kids. It's loving for you to introduce your children to the hard parts of life so they don't meet them firsthand on their own. What I mean is, if your child is using the internet and you can't say the words pornography or pedophile to them, yet alone mental health and bullies, those are ideas your child just has to at least have a concept of. So for pornography, you can use something like good picture, bad picture. Please check it out. For unsafe adults, I really like Greta Eskridge at Mom and Pop Modern. I also really like what Chris McKenna at Protect Young Eyes does. But really, for the pedophile side, you're going to put in something like Bark in place. And what Bark does is it looks for the conversations coming through text, through direct messages. You need an Android device or to actually use a Bark phone. Two different things. There's a software you can install on an Android device. It'll see all the messages that go back and forth, but you don't read them all. You only get alerts on the ones that go sideways. The things that are a little questionable, like someone has told your 12-year-old daughter, she's so pretty, they can't believe she's only 12. That will get sent to you, and you get the follow-up conversation on, hey, I saw that this gentleman online mentioned this to you. Who is he? Where'd you meet him? Are you sure that he's actually also 12? Is there a chance that he's 50? So that is what we want to say, because that is what the situations that are out there. It's very hard to tell an avatar from another until we have the conversational hints, clues. If it was just one creeper and one comment, that's a thing. But the real danger comes when those relationships get embedded and this becomes a friend and this becomes a grooming situation where your child doesn't even know what's happening, so can't alert you until it's been done, till the damage is very evident and now the shame is real and there might be threats involved. And I don't say this to you just to freak you out. I say this because those are real internet options and I can't say they're not. They're not super prevalent. It's certainly more common than your child being abducted walking down the street or being hit by a car. Like, it's more common to experience those other real world harms. The last numbers I saw was 9% of young people were approached by pedophiles online in a given year. That probably is higher now because some of them are getting very good at reaching large numbers of young people, specifically if your child has a social media platform. So you have to be able to set loving boundaries, hedges, physical distance around devices, family, and network, and also hedges around expectations that involve scaffolding, building the little steps to get that freedom that your child wants and is showing that they're responsible for. They're faithful in little. Now you can trust them in much. They have the skills to appropriately handle that. And you can now, while it's still scary and you'll still be anxious about it because you're a loving parent, you will allow them to take a little more leash, if you will, out into the digital spaces. For real world friends, that is something our children need. I would see this from two angles. I see this from two angles. First is your child needs real world friends. So other kids are living this life. Today, I did a talk to 80 moms. And the number one question I had is, yeah, but what about being left out? In fact, it was actually really cool. I had a former student that I taught who is now there with her 1-year-old. And she's like, yeah, but like, I remember not having a phone and I remember being so stressed about it and like feeling like I was being left out. How can I help my daughter not experience that? And the first question I asked is, well, where are those cool kids now? That was the phrase she used. They were all these cool kids and they had these phones and I didn't get to be a part of that. I was like, where are those kids now? And she just stared at me and she's like, yeah, I don't know them. And they're not the cool kids anymore. I was like, right. I was like, so your parents weren't wrong, but it is hard and we need to recognize that. And the number one thing you can do to make it less hard to not be in all those digital spaces is to give them meaningful relationships in real life. You don't need a ton of friends. Get 1, 2, 3. People who will make time to be with you, who will share life with you, and who will take an inconvenience to their own goals in order to support your goals. To make sure this doesn't end up being like an abusive, unsafe relationship thing, what we're talking about is choosing the highest good for the other person. I don't just mean, well, this person asked me to do it, so now I have to because I want to be their friend. No, we look at, is that a good thing? If that's going to hurt them or hurt someone else, then the best thing I can do as a loving friend is to tell someone and get help, right? It is not snitching when you are saving a life or saving someone from harming themselves or others. We would much rather be a good friend in this life rather than a really good eulogist. And I only share that because I've seen both sides in middle school. Those kids who feel conflicted about sharing something because they want to be a good friend, and that means keeping secrets, right? And to an extent, yeah, like that's a middle school thing, right? That we like share secrets with one another, and they're not safety secrets. They're just who you like and what you care about. And you let people inside that really, really brittle shell of middle school and high school where everything is scary and you don't really want to be known because people will make fun of you, and they will. They're mean. But a friend you can tell, and a friend you can trust. And you can trust them that when it's unsafe, they're going to get you the help you don't even know how to ask for yourself. We want that friend. So first thing is get your child a real world friend. Invite people into your circle that are like-minded. Find those parents who agree, you know what? We want our children to have a childhood. We want to raise up children in the way they should go. These don't just have to be Christians. Some of them might be pre-Christian people. They're on the path. They want wisdom, and they just don't have the words yet. They have the hunger, though, to recognize this is wrong, that is right, and we want to raise our kids up in a healthful, loving, safe environment. Not helicopter safe. Like safe as in we let them take risks and get hurt in responsible ways, because that's what's safest in the long run. Bones heal. Mental illness is a whole nother thing we have to process, and we are actively causing it by not giving our children healthful opportunities to experience risk. And in fact, doing the exact opposite and putting them in such safe environments that everything feels stressful because they simply don't know how to process any kind of hardship. And I said that with a smile because I can think of what I've done with my own kids. I'm not saying that because if you've done that, you've somehow broken your child. They are all fixable problems. In fact, these are the 5 fixes we're talking about. How do we do? If we realize, oh my goodness, I'm overprotecting my child, how do we do it? Well, real world friends would be an example. That's the first. And then the second is bring people into that. And then the second part B is you're now modeling what real world friends can look like, and you're making a new norm. Finally, point them to hope. Point them to the idea that when life is hard and when work is hard, when you're tired, or when something's great and you want to celebrate, or you have an argument with a friend, or somebody dies, or anything goes right or wrong, that we want to be turning to the Lord because he gives us a greater purpose. It's not just turn to whatever makes us feel good. So let's be thoughtful and intentional on this. When we point them to hope, we point them away from themselves. In my life, this means I haven't played video games in almost 13 years because video games were the thing that I misused. And now, to a lesser degree, it's chocolate chip cookies. And that's easier for me to manage because I don't always have a chocolate chip cookie. I don't carry them around in my pocket, unlike my digital distractions. So I have a very dumb smartphone right here. And it's very locked down and lovely, and it's very effective and purposeful, and I love it. I have a very specific set of things I do for enjoyment, which doesn't involve video games anymore. And I want to point my children to the hope they have in Christ. So they recognize 2 Corinthians 5:17 speaks truly when it says that you are now a new creation. The old is gone, the new is come. And that this idea is that as new creations, we live out of what God has already done in us. That our tech reflects what is already true about us, that you're not trying to change your tech, child of mine, so that I'll love you. You're changing it because I love you. The reason we're changing video games, the reason I no longer game isn't because I want God to like me. It's because I know he already does. And I realize that my gaming doesn't reflect the call he's giving me as a husband, as a father, as someone serving youth in my area. I can't do that stuff and game. At least I can't do that stuff to the extent I'm being called to it and play video games. And that's what we want our children to see. Like, we want you to have the best stuff, not just stuff that isn't that bad. So point them to hope. Keep hope as your focus. And remember the Ephesians 2:10 promise that we are not just saved from the world, we're saved for it. That we are prepared beforehand to do good works, and that in Christ we do them. So let's make our tech line up with those good works. So I hope this is encouraging. I hope those 5 fixes make sense. It's not behavior management. You're not trying to make a better kid. You're trying to take a kid who's already loved by God and help he or she to see who she can become, or who he can become in Christ, in light of God's work inside of him and inside of her, and into the good works God's preparing him or her to do. All right. If this was helpful, please share it with someone. You can find us on social media at Love God Use Tech on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. And you can send me any questions to nathan@gospeltech.net. And I hope these 5 fixes have equipped you to figure out what you can do with the reset and how you can continue to raise healthy youth in a tech world. Join us next week as we continue this conversation about how we can love God and use tech.